Hello, class. My name is Shamika Harrison, and the country I'll be discussing today is Nigeria. Why Nigeria? I was immediately drawn to Nigeria because of its large youth population. I believe that when we instill morals and educate our youth on things we want to see positively impacting the world and society, future leaders are born. Let's discuss some general facts. The president of Nigeria is Muhammadu Buhari. Nigeria is located in West Africa and has a population of over 180 million people. Nigeria has one of the largest populations of youth in the world. The oil and gas business is one of Nigeria's most essential resources. As an organizational leader constructing an ethical culture in Nigeria, these are important facts to consider. Northeastern Nigeria is controlled by Boko Haram. Corruption is an issue in Nigeria. Lack of education is an issue. As I stated above, youth account for over half of West Africa's population. Education is limited to youth depending on socioeconomic status. Northeastern Nigeria, which is controlled by Boko Haram, has the lowest level of youth enrolled in school. Several educational institutions have been destroyed and children and teachers killed by Boko Haram's extremist group. The presidential candidate of the Alliance for New Nigeria, Fela Dorote, has said Nigerian leaders do not value the nation's education sector because they, the leaders, lack qualitative education. The Bureau of African Affairs indicates that the United States government is currently assisting Nigeria to counter corruption and to build institutional capacity in education and other services. That leads me to the two moral issues to consider. Organizational leader working in Nigeria, the two moral issues to consider are education and corruption. Corrupt officials. Corruption has been an issue in Nigeria at all levels. Citizens do not trust the police or judicial system because they accuse them of being corrupt. Corrupt business. The oil business is one of the most corrupt businesses in Nigeria. As noted earlier, oil and gas are essential resources of Nigeria. The oil business employs a significant number of Nigeria's population. As an organizational leader working in Nigeria, it's imperative to establish a plan that keeps the organization and employees from engaging in corrupt practices. As an organizational leader working in Nigeria, the steps to approach corruption are as follows. Step 3, the relevant stakeholders are the employees, company, and the shareholders. Step 4, stakeholder interests, employee, company, shareholders. For the employee, the interest is job security. For the company and the shareholders, interest will involve business transactions that are not corrupt and the protection of the company reputation. The company will want to make sure that employees understand that corruption will not be tolerated and will result in immediate termination. Step 4, alternative action. The first is establishing a mandatory ethical code of conduct for the organization. The second is establishing a whistleblowing policy. This action will also assure employees that any and all reporting is to remain completely confidential and should not be discussed with anyone other than the organizational leader. The third is establishing an acknowledged ethical business contract for any and all outside business. Step 6, pros and cons. Pros are accountability and demonstration of an ethical organization. Making sure that employees are well trained, understand and accept the organization's ethical code of conduct, and understand their rights in business. Making sure transactions and partnerships are guided by ethical contracts. Cons. Cons are reduced business transactions due to ethical business contracts. Not that the organization will want to engage in working with corrupt businesses. A contract of this nature could, with the depth of corrupt practices in Nigeria at all levels of officials and businesses, could result in reduced business. Step 7, conflicting principles. And then we move to step 7, conflicting principles. Reparation. If someone engages in corruption, they will lose their job. The person who reports them is to remain anonymous, which means they won't be able to make up to that person for the injuries they cause. Non-injury involves not harming someone physically or psychologically. The loss of a job could harm someone both physically and psychologically. So those two principles are conflicting. Step 8, honesty. We should not engage in manipulation or deception. Self-improvement. To promote one's own good, what traps to avoid. Providing ethical codes of conduct and policies to all stakeholders satisfies an applicable principle for self-improvement. Justice. Being fair by making sure that actions support all stakeholders. Preferred action. The preferred action for the approach to corruption would be implementing a whistleblowing policy. According to Francis and Guy Murphy, a person is unlikely to behave unethically if they know there is a high chance that the behavior will be reported. As an organizational leader, it is important to understand that many in Nigeria lack education. Those who lack education is due to either socioeconomic status or gender. Educational institutions that exist are mainly private, so those from low socioeconomic status are unable to send their kids to school. Moms will send their sons to school and send their daughters to work as street vendors. Now let's walk through the steps of how an organization can approach this issue. As an organizational leader, the steps to approach the moral issue of lack of education in Nigeria are as follows. Step 3, relevant stakeholders, your employees, your community, and your company. The stakeholder interest for the employees is the jobs, the community education and training opportunity, and the company's skilled workforce. Step 5, alternative action. First option is on the job training. The second is educating on business ethics. Providing skills using integrity mode. According to Francis and Guy Murphy, the key difference between the integrity mode and the compliance mode is that management does not seek to impose its values, but aims to have employees share their values. The aim is to embed ethical code in the culture. So, as I stated, educating on business ethics. We want to bring ethical code in the culture. Step 6, pros and cons. Pros include social acceptance. Those who lack education will feel socially accepted if they are able to become employable. So the second pro is employability skills. Cons would include community outrage on an organizational leader for discrimination. This con relates to individuals not being hired based on their education and skills. Step 7, conflicting principles. Right to education. Education is a right. Justice as an organization approaching the issue of education, resources and size may not allow everyone who lacks education this opportunity. Applicable principles include non-parasitism. As an organization, members will be afforded the benefit of on-the-job training and education. Each member that benefits to a community should contribute so that others can benefit. Self-improvement. Employees who lack education will have the opportunity to gain business education, through on-the-job educational practices. And step 8, the preferred method. The preferred method would be providing training and business education to employees regardless of their education or socioeconomic status. In conclusion, as an organizational leader, it is important to remember what morality means. Morality is an attitude of concern for human well being from a broad and non interested perspective. Thanks for watching. In conclusion, as an organizational leader, it is important to remember what morality. In conclusion, as an organizational leader, it is important to remember